I was looking very much forward to what Sharon is going to share with us tonight. I feel very strongly that this is an area we haven't truly explored in terms of logotherapy. And, if we consider what meaning really is about, it's a sense of connection,
Mhm.
it's a sense of belonging to, it's a sense of being part of. And for heaven's sakes, this world is our home. This is where we are as human beings. And not to be sensitive to our home, not to look after it, not to feel part of it, not to appreciate it and be grateful for it. There's such what we are fighting on all levels is a meaningless sense of mindlessness, of uh, unconcern, uninvolvement. In fact, and even worse, to abuse and to use whatever there is and any aspect of life, nature included, for selfish gain. And that's the very, very opposite of the main theme of logotherapy, namely that the essence of human existence is responsibleness.
Mm.
But there's, right. So we know we have, I mean, if you look at the creation story, what did God do with Adam when he called all the animals and Adam was to name them? My word, it's like a preview of that we would discover certain animal species. We are the ones to give them names. And often animal is named after the person who've discovered, or the working with them, or some discovery in the living world is named after the person who has actually brought it to the fore and into our attention and to our mind. So there is such a tremendous connection that we should have with nature. And if you think about Frankel's experiential values, which to me is the central value, this is where it all starts. If you can um, tune into and feel part of that which is good and true and beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. There's such truth in the lawfulness of nature, too, to be found, such goodness to discover, such links to be made to animals. Think of uh, Daniel in the lion's den. Why didn't the lions devour him? What was it about him? Animals are driven by fear, and that is why they are so weary of us. But isn't our whole logotherapeutic thrust to overcome fear and to have a loving connection to love, perfect love, that the scripture tells us drives out all fear, because fear has a fear of punishment or of attack. And wow, when we can actually come out into who we are and take possession of our earth in a responsible way, all of these counter elements will be given such a blow. So, without further ado, please, Sharon, I was waiting for this. Tell us all about it.
Well, thanks, Tyria. Thank you for that great creating the background for motivation for exploring how we could integrate nature and animals into our logotherapeutic practice. So yeah, I'm Sharon Boyce. I'm a counseling psychologist and I'm a logotherapy trainer. And today I'm privileged to share with you just really, it's going to be a brief exploration into how nature and animals can serve as pathways to meaning. So I'm going to draw this session, I'm going to draw on some theory to create a theoretical background as to why, or to substantiate the integration of nature and animals. Well, I'll also give you some ideas about how to integrate nature and animals into practice, and then provide a little just a really brief overview of the benefits of nature and animals on well-being as is indicated in the research. And then I'm going to just share with you my own PhD research as an example of integrating nature and animals, specifically animals and horses, into practice. So I'm going to first start with ecopsychology, which is quite supposedly it seems like it's quite new, but actually integrating nature into therapy is not really modern. And as Teria has mentioned, I mean, there's ancient connections of us as humans to nature. And we are actually a part of nature. We are not separate to nature. We are part of nature. And yes, we have a huge responsibility to nature, as we were commissioned to do. But that doesn't make us separate to nature. And there are many cultures that have understood that human healing is deeply intertwined with nature, with animals, plants, and elements, including the cosmos, but also their healing and their well-being is deeply intertwined with ours. It's not one directional, it's unidirectional. And the American Psychology Association supports the inclusion of nature into mental health practice. And in a way, it's like it's putting it out there that this is something new, but really it's echoing ancient cultures, what ancient cultures already knew. And if we bring it closer to the South African context, we can draw on the wisdom of Ubuntu, because Ubuntu teaches that our identity is shaped through connection, not just with others, but also with nature. And this forms the heart of eco-philosophy, where well-being arises from recognizing our interdependence with the natural world. And so there are a couple of theories that help to explain this, and I'm not going to go into too much detail of them, but just to give you an overview. So the first is the biophilia hypothesis. And really what that suggests is that our evolutionary survival depends on tuning into nature. So finding food, sensing danger, predicting the weather, that ancient need still lives in us today. And so nature connection enhances our well-being. But we are not separate to nature, but we are part of nature. And we need connections to nature in order for us to be well. So then attention restoration theory. All right, that explains that natural environments help us to restore our depleted mental energies. Okay, so unlike cities that drain our attention, nature gently engages us. It allows us to rest, to reflect, and to emotionally reset. So very important that we are able to be restored through our experiences with nature. And when I say nature, I mean animals as well. I include animals. The other theory for us to think about is stress reduction theory, okay? Because that shows that non-threatening natural settings automatically reduce stress. So they lower blood pressure, cortisol, and emotional tensions. So research shows that nature fosters emotional integration. It shifts our mood, expands our sense of self, and it deepens a sense of meaning. So in essence, reconnecting with nature is more than a lifestyle choice. It's a return to an essential relationship that supports mental, emotional, and spiritual health. So if we think about it, it's not a real big leap to get to logotherapy from that space, because in our world that's marked by uncertainty, trauma, rapid change, and existential confusion, logotherapy provides us with the tools to navigate suffering without collapsing into despair. So logotherapy does not promise happiness, but it invites us to find meaning even in pain, which in turn fosters resilience, dignity, and hope. Okay, I mean, Frankl wrote, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost anyhow." And so nature provides us with the opportunity to have a why to live. So we need logotherapy because it does what few other approaches do. It respects suffering, it affirms human freedom, and it calls us to responsibility. But it doesn't do that in the abstract. Okay, but it does it within each person's unique concrete situation. It's very personal, very specific. So when we think of eco-psychology and its nature-based and animal-assisted approaches, as I shared in the previous slide, that they resonate very, very deeply with the principles of logotherapy. So Frankl taught us that meaning is the primary human motivation, and that we can confront and transcend existential anxieties, not by eliminating them, but by engaging with them meaningfully. And in this, and Frankl proposed that there are three pathways to meaning. So the creative values, what we contribute to the world, our gifts to the world. The experiential values, what we receive, what we receive through interactions, through relationships, and again, and our attitudinal values about how we respond to suffering. So meaning is possible in every moment. And nature and animals can activate all three. So creatively, we can engage through care and interaction and responsibility with nature and animals. So for instance, feeding one of our pets or tending to our garden or simply showing up in the outdoors with presence. So and experientially, we can receive the beauty of a sunset, or we can be touched or we can be touched with a sense of awe for this beautiful vista that we are seeing, or potentially, or even experientially, just the touch of a dog or a cat, or sitting in the quiet companionship of a horse. So these are moments that bring awe, they bring connection, and transcendence. And if we consider attitudinally, being in nature can help people find the strength to face grief, fear, or uncertainty with dignity. The natural world offers a perspective and stillness. Animals offer us presence without judgment. And for many, words are not enough, especially in trauma or grief. Nature and animals offer us a non-verbal, embodied way to meaning. They create space for reflection, for emotional safety, and a felt sense of being part of something larger. So if we think about it, nature can be an alleviator of our existential anxieties. And Frankl taught us that life always asks us questions, even when we are suffering. And that very often these core existential anxieties that we experience remain unspoken, yet they have a huge impact on our inner world and shape who we are. So we're always navigating, how are we moving from identity crisis to searching for authenticity? How do we move from disconnect to joy and meaning? How do we move from meaninglessness to a commitment to finding purpose and meaning in our lives? How do we move from isolation to this longing for community and connection? How do we move from freedom to the how do we move between freedom and the responsibility to choose? And how do we move? How do we move in that space of not feeling that we are overwhelmed by this, or that we are restricted in this freedom? And again, also, how do we shift from death anxiety to a pursuit of transcendence and a sense of legacy, and that our life was meaning, and we reflect on our life, that it is meaningful. And you'll notice that I've added two positive existential anxieties to the traditional existential anxieties. Though I've added happiness, which is not a hedonic form of happiness. It's a very deep eudaimonic, noetic happiness, and also I've added identity because they are, in a way, they are positive elements of the anxieties that we experience as humans. So these existential anxieties are not something that need to be eliminated, but something that we want to face with courage and responsibility. And that is in the service of discovering meaning. So in this way, nature and animals can serve as existential mirrors. They can help our clients experience meaning intellectually, physically, and emotionally. And it's through nature and animals, through their presence, through the natural cycles and the seasons, that we can get to experience and have a greater understanding of death and how death is a part of life. What animals can model how to be authentic, how to be, they can model systems of how we can move to be connected and to move away from feeling isolated. Through experiences of awe and beauty, we can experience a sense of meaning in life. So they create a space for reflection. They create living, sensory, and symbolic contexts that invite existential reflection. So a walk in nature or an encounter with an animal can evoke in us an awareness of life, of death, of belonging, and of freedom in deeply, deeply embodied ways. Also, very importantly, spiritual freedom, okay? That ability to choose our response even in suffering. And this is central to logotherapy, that in nature people can often encounter this inner world with new clarity. And the non-judgmental presence of animals can soften people's defenses, can enable a deeper confrontation with some of these very difficult questions relating to identity, mortality, and meaning. And what I think is important to understand is that nature and animals are not solving existential questions, but rather they are providing a mirror and companionship. They offer opportunities to explore metaphorically, or to have an experience of sensory grounding, or to be with them in an unconditional presence that allow us to meet our inner world without judgment. And ultimately, logotherapy teaches that we're free to choose our attitude. So even when external circumstances remain unchanged, and nature offers us a setting where this freedom becomes visible, becomes felt, and it becomes embodied. And if we look to the work of Frankl and his extensive writings, we'll find reflections of nature in his writings in the camps. And we'll see how he reflected on the beauty of nature as a portal to transcendence in one of his writings, where he speaks of, as we beheld, and I'm not going to read them out, but just what really stands out, as we beheld the mountains of Salzburg with their summits glowing in the sunset through the little barred windows of the prison carriage. Despite that, or maybe because of it, we were carried away by nature's beauty. Or the spiritual connection of moments of natural beauty, where he writes, I sensed my spirit piercing through the enveloping gloom. I felt it transcend that hopeless, meaningless world. A fellow prisoner rushed in and asked us to run out to the assembly grounds and to see the wonderful sunset. So even in the face where you are starving, hungry, where people are dying, where life is so uncertain, that you could run outside into the campgrounds and be in awe of the wonderful sunset. And again, which leads into this finding meaning through nature amidst suffering. He writes, one man even wrote a poem on a torn scrap of paper about a tree in bloom. Even in Auschwitz, a tree could mean hope. So I use this as an example, and then there are many other examples in his writings where he speaks of nature, or he uses nature as a metaphor. And so to integrate nature and animals into logotherapy, I don't think is a big leap, or is a hard ask. So I want to ask you, and you can just put your answers in the chat. We won't we won't reflect on them, but just to give you a moment to reflect and share with us right now, in your own life, what animal has benefited you? And if that, and another question that I ask is also, what animal has benefited from you? So you may not have felt that you benefited an animal, but what animal has benefited from you? And it would be great if you could just put your answers in the chat. Just a one or two words would be wonderful. Yeah, it's wonderful. Dogs, yeah. Elri and Maya Kagiso, also dogs, yeah. Oh, dogs and horses. Yeah, my dog Bentley, stunning. Yeah, blind dog Diana, stunning. Super. So I asked the question because again, it's not unidirectional. It's not us providing benefit to the animals, but we get a benefit from the animals in return. So it's a bi-directional connective. We're in relationship with them. I'm going backwards and forwards, it looks like. Here we go. So I want to bring us now to thinking about, all right, so what are different ways to integrate nature and animals into our work? All right. So really, when we think of the activity, we're going to be doing something in nature or doing something with animals, or we could be in a space of being. All right. Or we could be observing. And not only are we observing nature and animals, but we could be observing representations of them as well. So it could be photos, it could be pictures. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the in-person interactions. We can be outdoors, so we could, whether we're walking in nature, gardening, doing farm work, caring for animals, all sort of basically looking at facilitating experiences in natural settings, which includes interactions with animals. It can also be indoors, all right? So like plants in your office, pictures, books, videos, documentaries, and also interacting with animals, because one doesn't have to only be outside to interact with animals, but we can be indoors as well. So when we think about these activities, that just creates a base. That slide creates a basis of what activities can look like. These activities happen on a continuum of intensity. So when we're in a room and we've got nature in the room, or we've got pictures of nature in the room, those are low intensity activities. All right. And then we could move more into a more traditional talk therapy setting outdoors in nature. That's a middle picture, is a picture of some benches that I have in an outdoor setting. And so we're kind of in nature. We are being in nature, being around nature. Okay. And then the third picture, where nature becomes a part of the triadic therapeutic relationship. So that is when we're really structuring our activities with a lot of intention to integrate nature into our therapeutic treatment programs as a way to enhance what our treatment goal, in terms of meeting our treatment goals or meeting our clients' needs. And so if we think about how we're going to integrate this, I hope that this gives you an idea that there's different levels of intensity, but it all falls under nature-based therapy or inclusion or into therapy. So if I come to animals in therapy, I just wanted to give you some examples. So, in the literature, there's all sorts of different animals that are being used in therapy: dogs, cats, horses, rabbits, lizards. I've been in programs in Israel where they use a lot of chinchillas. And so chinchillas are not animals that I've come into contact with in South Africa. So I think there's all different kinds of animals. And based on that continuum of intensity, there are low intensity. We have implicit activity. Okay, so in an implicit integration of animals into therapy would be that we're in the presence of the animal. we're observing non-directively, all right? When we explicitly integrate them into therapy, then there's simple contact with animals, maybe directed observing. So I've got ducks and chickens and geese, and I had no idea until some of the children I worked with showed me how valuable these animals are to healing and to finding peace and to learning some alternative ways of being in the world. And then we have instrumental activities, which are far more directed. So these are high intensity, okay? Directed activities between people and animals. And so I've just included some pictures here to show you what that could look like. So I often have the dogs around me, and we're not explicitly using them or integrating them into therapy. They're around, they're implicit, and they're amazing how they can show up when somebody is, when they have a perception that somebody has a need for greater contact with them. And I know I've worked with some people who are dealing with the grief, and I have a dog that always showed up in a person's session. And many sessions later, he said to me, this little guy helped me deal with grief. He knew how to help me. He just sat on my lap, sat next to me, not asking anything of me, but not frightened of my intense grief. And he could be here with me and with you. And he's my grief buddy. So I think that it's just hugely, hugely powerful. So if we go to the research, what are the well-being benefits of interacting with nature? So there are reported psychological well-being benefits, again, enhancing meaning and purpose, or that improvements in autonomy, self-esteem, personal growth, emotional well-being benefits, so improvements in positive emotions, life satisfaction, reductions in negative emotions, depression and anxiety. I think it's what always stands out for me is that the research shows it's either one or the other. It's like there's there's positive improvements, or there's a decrease from a pathology perspective. And I think from a logotherapeutic perspective, what needs to be done is how do we hold the two? So how can we research with people that, yes, life is difficult or life is struggling, and I can still be well, and I can transcend that. I can find meaning. And so I will share a little bit about my research, which highlighted some of those factors. So yeah, so social well-being, physical well-being, all different benefits of interacting with nature. What matters most, which I find fascinating, is that nature connectedness and engaging in simple activities are more beneficial than time spent passively in nature. And I think that's key if we think from a therapeutic perspective, because if people can be passive in nature, they can go out into nature. But when we come from a therapeutic perspective, we are intentional about what we are doing. So we will engage people from an intentional space, and we will encourage connectedness through intentionality. And I think that's very, very important. And also the quality of the connection predicts well-being, more well-being rather than the quantity of exposure. So I think that's also important, is that we don't have to think, oh, we have to be out there for a very long time, or people have to have very long interactions, but actually the quality of the connection. So if we think from a therapeutic perspective, what's the quality of the relationship and the connection that we are aspiring to have, and that it's meaningful, how important that is. Again, similar benefits have been reported to well-being when animals have been incorporated. So also mental benefits, reductions in depression, anxiety, PTSD, and stress-related disorders. Okay, social benefits, enhancements of social connection, positive relationships, social integration, and also in a wide range of different populations. So from children through to the elderly, through clinical populations and non-clinical populations. All right, the emotional benefits of having an unconditional, non-judgmental presence. Physiological benefits also similar to that in nature, but reductions in cortisol and blood pressure, increases in oxytocin, endorphins, all those happy hormones, so to speak. And the considerations that we had to think of is well, one is in this area of research that there are not a lot of high quality randomized controlled trials. And also that's not clear how long and how many interactions one needs to have. And there's also need to monitor for adverse effects. And I think that's important for us to think about. There are some adverse effects, so they can relate to fears that people have, it can be related to allergies, potentially physical fitness, depending on exertion things. So I think we need to hold the benefits also in an awareness from an ethical perspective with, well, what are the risks? And ultimately we want to say with any person that we're working with is that the benefits of being in nature or integrating animals into our work outweigh the risks. And we will make that decision collaboratively with our clients. So I thought to share my PhD research as an example of, so although I was not allowed to use logotherapy as a theoretical framework, I used eco-existential positive psychology. So that's an integration of eco-psychology and existential positive psychology. And in my opinion, existential positive psychology is rooted in logotherapy. So one of the major theorists in existential positive psychology is Paul Wong, and he is trained in logotherapy. And there's a lot of overlap in this space. So I worked with adults in a South African under-resourced community up the road from me. 179 people were in my research study. They half of them, the people were assigned to a control group who didn't participate in the intervention that I created, and the other half participated in the intervention. And the intervention is called Surviving to Thriving. It's 16 hours of equine assisted psychological intervention. It's a multi-component intervention. It includes psychoeducation, meaning-oriented activities with horses in nature, as well as some home-based activities which encourage reflection and connection to community. It was a concurrent mixed methods design, so I know that's a big mouthful, and quasi-experimental, so which means that people were not randomly assigned to groups. We working in community. The original plan to randomly assign people fell apart due to many different factors, and so we had to work with what we could have. So as people came in, they were assigned to either the control group if there was, or to the experimental group if there was space, and the control group if there wasn't space for them to be able to be included in an intervention. And we used measures, and we measured flourishing, meaning, and hope before the intervention, after the intervention, and 3 months later. And then between the or just from between the once people had finished the intervention and before the 3 months were up, then I did interviews with them to explore their experience of the intervention and the benefits that they experienced. So what I have done now to share with you in terms of what changed for the participants, I've tried to share with you an integration of the quantitative and the qualitative results without going too much in depth. If anybody's interested, I can go more in depth, but I thought that wouldn't be relevant to do that today. And you'll see my dog's paw in the background as he's having a good stretch. And I think he's agreeing with me that I mustn't bore everybody with too much research data. So from a flourishing, when we look at flourishing, most of the participants reported that they felt calmer, more balanced, and more connected to others in nature. And while not all the changes were large in the data, the personal stories revealed a deep growth. So there were changes in flourishing from pre to post, and those changes were maintained at 3 months later, but not on all of the measures. And one thing that really did change is that in the group that attended the intervention, those who were languishing before the intervention were no longer languishing after the intervention. And at 3 months later, they were still no longer languishing. So that was a very interesting shift, and one that was supported by the stories that the participants told. And also fascinatingly is that the participants shared that flourishing was not just about feeling good, but it was about growing stronger in the face of hardship. And so, and again, I think that is so reflective of logotherapy and the logotherapeutic principles. So when we look at meaning, before the program, the participants were searching for meaning while they were dealing with stress, loss, and poverty. They reported that the program helped them to reflect, connect, and rediscover purpose through relationships, spirituality, and service. And this was reflected both in the quantitative data and in the qualitative in their stories. And interestingly, for the unemployed participants, their search for meaning remained really important, and that they felt better equipped to be able to continue in life, even though their circumstances did not change. And if we look to hope, not all areas of hope improved equally, but the participants described that they felt uplifted and spiritually strengthened through their interactions with the horses and being in nature. They've also reported that the group support, nature, and the equine interactions help restore trust in life's possibilities. And I think that is huge. Hope was not just about achieving goals. And very often definitions of hope are that it's about that we feel that we've got the ability and that we can see pathways to achieving our goals. But actually, hope is far more than that. Hope is about connection, about faith, and the belief that that life could still improve. And that this deeper relational hope gave the participants a sense of belonging and a strength that they could keep going. So that in the face of their suffering, that life was meaningful, and that they had hope to continue, and that things may not get better, but even if they don't get better, that they are still important and they still matter, and they can, and they are important in this world. So something that happened out of it's separate to my research, is that I agreed that the intervention I wrote, the Surviving to Thriving, could be used for an international study in the US, where they wanted to look at what is the impact of a big study of horses, or the integration of horses into treatment for veterans. And the money the program was funded. Sorry, I'm getting my words mixed up. Through a VA grant. So the VA is the National Veterans Association of the USA. And so there were 11 programs across 11 states in the USA. There were 213 veterans who participated. They went through 16 hours of the Surviving to Thriving curriculum. They also collected quantitative and qualitative data. And the preliminary results show that 93% of the participants reported improved mental health and overall well-being. And that they found that the interactions with the horses significantly enhanced the experience. And the themes that emerged include emotional growth, personal resilience, and community connection. And on their quantitative data, they showed significant changes in psychological well-being, and on all of the different subscales of that. They used the RIFS psychological well-being scale, which is actually part of one of the scales that I used, which is really interesting. So that was I found really fascinating, an unexpected contribution of my work into the field of integrating equines into psychotherapy. So I've done a lot of talking, and I want to just give you an opportunity just to reflect a little bit for yourselves. Recall a moment in nature or an interaction with an animal where you felt moved, seen, or deeply connected. Can you recall one of those, an experience? And in that moment, what value was being affirmed? And just share one word in the chat. Yeah, horses and dogs. I belong, Pan. Yeah, I'm enough. Audrey, thank you. Connectedness, Robert. Wonderful. Warmth and love. Yeah, a horse who laid down and bore his belly to me affirmed deep trust. So thank you for sharing those profound moments where a value has been affirmed for you. So as I come to the end of what I've set out to share with you today, I just, as a summary, want to share with you that we've explored how animals are not only adjuncts, but powerful allies in logotherapy. Okay, they offer connection, challenge, inspiration, and reflection, and they support all three of the logotherapeutic pathways to meaning. So this integration opens a grounded and hopeful path for our work. And so I'm going to stop my talking right now and just see and pause if there are any questions or insights that people would like to, so we just have a little bit of a discussion. I think we have some time. Yeah, we do have time. I wanted to make time for discussion. So yeah, it's here from you all. Anyone have questions or some insights?
I do.
Well, I don't want to take up all the time here. So who spoke
something?
there?
I think
Yeah.
there's I think it's Dr. Kanda.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Sharon, thank you very much. I'm very, very pleased to see that you have completed your work, and it does definitely contribute to some of the questions which we started asking many, many years ago when your group joined the course of logotherapy. You came with the concept of equine. That was the equine assisted therapy.
That's
And
right.
the question was, can logotherapy be applied? So your work is beautifully, beautifully illustrating that, and it has confirmed that indeed it's workable. And what I'm hoping and wishing for you is, like with the veteran study, that this continue further. Yeah, with me, my comment might be biased because I have some kind of connection with you. And I just wanted to tell the rest of the group that I'm very, very grateful that Sharon is in my life. She has actually shared her work with us in my hospital, which was a very special moment. So I did not want to answer your question because that was a special moment for me. And I'm so grateful that you are with us, and I'm hoping to see more because it's really, really needed. And of course, I've had the privilege of being where you are and seeing you applying it. So I'm definitely a biased opinion. So thank you very much. I'd like just to invite everyone to ask questions. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sharon.
Thanks, Dr. Kanda. I
No,
see
Sharon, you
Diana
satisfied? Yeah.
Sorry, Teria. No, sorry, Teria. I just see there's some hands up. So after you, I
Yeah,
think
please, no,
Diana and
please.
Maya.
I want the hands up first.
Okay, so Diana and then Maya, I think.
Okay. Thank you for that, Sharon. That was really lovely, and it was bringing to my memory that experience I had. It was an experimental thing with a therapist of mine who was had brought equine into the thing, and I was just brought in as part of this experiment, and I wasn't in the forefront of that time. I was feeling a lack of worthiness for being there, but that wasn't in the forefront. Like I wasn't playing that card, if you will. It was in the background. And that this was the horse that came up to me and just laid down and just exposed itself, like this total surrender. And like it just evoked in me this whole like, oh my God, like having been seen, like as if the horse detected, I know that you feel an intrinsic lack of worthiness. I'm going to show you that I see you and that I understand the caliber of your being and that I trust you deeply. And I don't think anything could have been more powerful for showing me that I was worthy, because people can say, you're so great or whatever, how well, they can talk and stuff. But the horse, like, there's nothing to be gained. You know how in the human relationships, there can be that someone might be complimenting you because they want it. Maybe you can further their position. Maybe they could, but in that relationship, it's so pure and clean that I mean, I had to take it. I had to, what am I going to doubt what this horse is kind of like, so it was very, very profound. I just wanted to share it because it's the one thing that my mind goes back to when I slip into that lack of worthiness thing. There is a part of me that slips back into that and goes, but how do you explain that, Diana? How do you explain that an animal is just meeting you for the first time, says you're okay? I know you're okay. I know you're safe. You're a safe person. And, yeah, I don't know.
Well, thank you for sharing that and such, that
Thanks.
profound experience, and really highlight that embodied experience of unconditional acceptance and creating a safe place for us to learn and to grow. Thank you. Yeah. Maya, do you want to go?
Yes, thank you, Sharon. First of all, thank you for this presentation. And I have a question because here in Serbia, I'm really interested to work with animals and also to use them in logotherapy. And I must say that this topic was not familiar to me before. So my question is, are those dogs trained, or do they have certificate? So they are like therapist dogs.
Okay, so you can train dogs and get them have a certificate as therapy and service dogs, and people do that. Okay. The dogs that I work with, I have not done that with my dogs. One is my dogs are used to people and are not aggressive. And one of the things that I'm still working through myself, all right, is that I trust that dogs that haven't been, that dogs, not dogs that have been traumatized and that are dealing with struggles themselves, but dogs, who are that they can show up naturally as themselves, that they are going to bring into the situation or into an experience something that's really, really powerful, because they're responding from their own ethological base of how they experience interaction. And I don't believe that dogs should be too desensitized or habituated or to something, and that then they should be responding from a space of learning. That,
Wow.
oh, this is a learned response. So I have many years of work with horses, and that's how we work with the horses. The horses are not trained. They are not desensitized or habituated to the interactions with the people. We work on the ground with them, with people. We do not ride them, so that automatically changes the safety dynamic. But we also know that horses respond from an ethological basis to people on the ground, that they can understand, that they see humans as part of their herd. We would acclimatize horses to, if we use props and things like that, so that they know what those are. But and I believe we want animals to respond from their natural ethological base. And
Yeah.
so I personally have not trained my dogs. They don't have any certificate in anything. I just think they're just good citizens, because that's who they are. So yeah, I think I know of another program that works. That's a residential program, and they allow their mental health professionals to bring their dogs. The only requirement they have is that the dogs are used to being crated, and that the dogs are social, that they get on with each other, that there's no aggressive dogs. And the reason it's important for the dogs to be crated is that so that they've created a space where the dogs can have choice, whether they want to be engaged with people or not. And so if they go into this room and they go into their crate, then that's their choice, that they don't want to engage. And so I think you can explore all the different things that work, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I'm asking this, because I have three dogs, actually, me and my husband, and one of them is a therapist dog, and my husband is biologist, and he's a dog trainer. So what we want to do in Serbia is also to have dogs who can work with children with ADHD, or who have some disabilities, because as a social worker and future logotherapist, I'm interested in working with children with disabilities and their parents. So we wanted to connect it in those two fields. So that's the reason why I asked if those dogs are really therapist dogs, or, for example, we can use our
Yeah.
dogs.
Yeah.
Maya, I would really like to respond so much to what Sharon was saying in terms of, we're thinking now of the meaning connection that animals can bring to people. And we really have to think that if we train, even if we train ourselves in a specific mindset, we are actually removing ourselves from what Frankl called our original spontaneity, our basic trust in life, which is what Diana described, such a surrender, such a symbiotic oneness with our original creative being. And if you think about an animal that is just allowed to be naturally themselves, you bring out, just like we do in therapy, if logotherapy is actually to unlearn people from things they have learned that have distanced themselves from. And it's to deconstruct to a point of where you can just be spontaneously yourself. And what came out so powerfully, and really, Sharon, you satisfied my heart, because I was wanting exactly this. To be rooted into, there's such a wonderful saying that truth sprouts from the ground. to elicit our inherent will to meaning in life, and to overcome the barriers of our fears that build up certain defenses and certain belief systems that actually needs it needs to be eliminated, and we need to just relax into who we are. That's really logotherapy. And when you connect to your basic trust in life, your spontaneous hope and belief, you are born with that, what Frankl said, intentionality, an intentional will to connect with. You seek an object to connect with. It's a natural, spontaneous human phenomenon. And the animal actually brings it out in us, because they just what has been so beautifully described, the unconditional acceptance of you. They don't bear grudges. They don't. They're not aloof. You don't have to win them over. The thing that wins them over is your love, and it allows the animal to be what he is being created to be too, and the invigoration that comes from that essential sense of connectedness that gives us that kind of resilience and perseverance, and that we can go through the most traumatic experiences, like the experience that the woman that Frankl interviewed or rather spoke to in the camps, and when she said, when he asked her, when she said to him and pointed out to a tree with a blossom outside, and she said she often spoke to the tree, and he thought, is this a hallucination? And he said, well, does the tree ever speak back to you? And she said, yes. It says, I'm life. I am here. I am here. I'm everlasting life. That's the connection that we seek in ourselves. That's the connection we want to bring out in anyone that is fear-ridden, or trapped by problems or by disabilities that make them experience fearful kind of defensiveness against, to just relax into their fundamental essence of being part of life in an exciting, inspirational way that gives hope and meaning and purpose. My word, it's that, like Frankl said, the heart is restless until that kind of fulfillment that you get, and this is a most powerful therapy in terms of eliciting what we're trying to do when we're counseling clients or when we're searching for our own authentic selves. So thank you, Sharon. You really did what I was looking for.
Well,
And
I'm
it's
glad
wonderful.
for that. Yeah, so I have one more slide at the end, which is an invitation to everybody to continue this journey. So yeah, just to consider, what is one meaningful action that you will take in nature with animals in the future?
Oh, exactly. To open up ourselves to everything that is there to richly enjoy and appreciate. Wonderful. Thank you. This was a great evening, and wonderful responses, and it really just made our hearts beat in the right kind of way. Thank you, Sharon.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share with you, and thank you all for listening and participating. It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thanks, Sharon. That was wonderful.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Sharon.